Hi, I'm Chayale.
Hi, I'm Hindi. Welcome to your Relationshift. Join in our conversation where we explore
The nuance and beauty of Torah's perspective on relationships.
Hi, Chayla. How are you?
Hey, great.
Baruch Hashem, feels so blessed to be here. I'm so excited for today.
And it's been a while. Feels like it's been a while.
Yeah, because school, summer, everything. But Baruch Hashem, we're here, and we've been getting a lot of feedback about the podcast, which is so nice. A lot of people are sharing that it's been extremely helpful, just like the in-between moments between having a coaching session with their coach, or let's say they're not supported right now with a coach, but they listen to the podcast and it helps them reset. So that's so nice.
Yeah, we love your feedback. It really makes it easier to come on here and know that there's actually somebody listening. We're not just sending this into the big world. And it's nice. It's nice to know that there's an audience and it's meaningful to them. It really makes a big difference. So yeah,
Yeah.
thank you everyone who's reached out.
Yeah, and don't hold back. We love all sorts of feedback. We'd love to hear whatever it is that you think about it. And if you have any questions or you want to share an example or a win, we'd love to hear that. If you want us to bring it to the world, we would be more than happy to do that for you, obviously anonymously. But share with us. You could always email us or message us if you have our number. With that, today we're going to be talking about trust the connection, which is a huge principle in Relationshift. And we're actually going to be presenting it in tandem with another principle, which is I create with my thoughts, words, and intention. So let's start with the first principle, trust the connection. Chayla, you want to start?
Yeah, so that's like just the so powerful, even just hearing those words. I trust the connection and I create with my thoughts, words, and intentions. It's like a lot happening here. So I trust the connection principle is questioning the connection calls the connection into question, and trusting the connection creates connection. So using the example firstly of Aaron HaKohen, who was known to be a pursuer of peace, and proactively help people reconnect and be connected and feel connected. And it's what's known about Aaron is that he would basically tell each party that what the other party really wants is the closeness, and there really is that care. And maybe there was a miscommunication, and maybe that's not how it came out. But the core of what the other person, he would basically tell both sides that each side wants the same thing. Each side wants to be close. And in doing that, in uncovering that intention on either side, people were able to come together. So what we see is, if we look at ourselves, what's happening a lot of the time in our connections, and it could happen in all connections, but specifically here in the context of marriage, is that we're so often in that space of questioning. Are we connected? Are we connecting? Is it happening? That we don't actually get to the space where we feel connected, because we're always asking the question of if. And like the principle says, that calls the connection into question, and then we're just in that mode of doubting, which is terrifying and
Right.
scary.
Yeah, 100%. So coming off of last week, where we were also talking about the love languages and how a person could kind of like limit themselves in how they see connection, how they view connection. Here we're saying, trusting the connection, there's a piece of it that in always being in a state of assessment of whether or not we are connected, that just by itself makes us feel less grounded and afraid and more disconnected.
Like a thought, that an example that came to mind is, someone telling me like, if my husband discusses work with me, like that's not a connecting conversation. I don't want to discuss work. Um, and then, I said to this particular client, well, what is a connecting conversation? Um, and it was kind of hard for them to articulate what exactly that was.
Hmm.
Um, so maybe we're looking for connection all the time and we're wondering if it's there. And maybe also we don't know what it is.
So it's interesting, like just again, like kind of bringing last time into this podcast. What I'm hearing is if I'm approaching my relationship from a space of lack, right? Like, I don't know, is there connection? Is there not? Then what's going to show up for me is more disconnect and lack, as opposed to what we were discussing last time, which was approaching my relationship from a space of abundance, from a space of like, what is there? And I totally hear you. Like, I feel like there's times where a woman doesn't even know, or maybe she's not even aware to the fact that she doesn't really know what she's looking for. Like, what does she actually want? Um, this is gonna sound funny and maybe inappropriate, but I feel like in some places where we have seen connection, right? So like maybe not necessarily with our parents, but let's say if we've been exposed to movies or books, there's like a very set scene of, oh, this is connection. Like this is the connection scene. This is where you could see that they love one another. And when you're the narrator of your own life, you're like, wait, when did that happen? Where is that scene? Is it happening? Right? So you're constantly like, is it happening? Like, is that now? As opposed to the abundance of you have a relationship with someone, you have a connection with this person, and it's showing up for you always is just something to maybe for us to explore.
Yeah. So maybe if we can expand the language around the word connection.
Mm,
Um, Again, that word, like you said, if someone has a definition for it in connection to a romantic relationship, a husband and wife, then it could be that that's like something that they picked up in a romance novel or in a classic movie scene where it's very much the romanticized, poetic, kind of cliche version of two people who are infatuated with each other, passionately expressing that infatuation. Um, and then, kind of outside of that, what else would look like? So that's what it is. And I think it's fair to say that in the average person's life, that's not in it's not showing up on the daily. So what are other words, that express express connection between two people? And I think a big one is commitment.
mm,
How do I know that me and this person are connected to one another? And that is
mm.
in the face of the fact that we are deeply committed to one another.
Meaning, what I'm hearing you say is the fact that we are actually married, that there was a day that we got married, that we committed to one another. Um, from then on, we share the same neshama. And that just by default, there's like a fundamental, basic, really foundational commitment that's there. So instead of like assessing constantly whether he's doing something that reflects commitment or shows on connection, instead it's there. We are committed to one another by the fact that we are married. And that's going to be just like my baseline connection that I could be feeling, that I could be leaning on, instead of constantly like feeling afraid that we're not. I could just lean on that baseline and then from there maybe grow more connection.
Yeah, yeah. And also, like you were saying, there was a day where we established this relationship as a like we made it into a thing when we got married. Something object like something changed in the universe, like, and that's why there's so much ceremony around it. It was like these two people now became one entity factually.
Mm-hmm.
And if that fact is, is gonna change, there's gonna have to be another set of activities that are gonna have to like undo that. So as long as as long as we're married and we're choosing to, meaning every day that we're married is re-entering that commitment. Like, if I'm married today, then I'm committing to that person today. I'm acknowledging that commitment and I'm standing by that commitment today. It's a strong sense of it's like a treating it like an the not an if, but the whole context of our relationship is, I am connected to this person. That is this. That is what this is. We are connected.
Right. And I find that actually it's interesting because I don't know if we've discussed this before, but I find that for men, sometimes it's a lot easier to lean on that because a man comes from, or it's more masculine, to have that midah of netzach, which is like that endurance, commitment, pushing oneself to go towards that goal. It's easier for men to see that that is connection, that that commitment is us, that we are, and a woman doesn't necessarily experience commitment as connection because she very much is in her own paradigm, which is like Bina, breaking down ideas and details, and this means that, and the analysis, which again, very good things, right? That serves us in many ways. But because we have a lot of that focus on Bina and Gevura and Haid, we're not as aligned with what commitment really means, which means connection, that we are. And I think it takes that reminder for a woman to realize that, to see that, even in the way that her husband is acting towards her. So when he's showing commitment to the relationship, to the family, to the marriage, he's showing her that he sees so clearly that they are connected. So it's really hard for her to, let's say, think that when he comes home and at supper time, he's talking about how hard he worked, for her to feel like that's connection. But to him, he's literally saying, my job is so hard for me. I hate going to work. I still do it every single day. I'm telling you how much I love you. But he's not saying I love you
Mm-hmm.
and we're so deeply connected and I feel that a whole day while I'm working so hard slogging away at the desk, He's saying I'm committed. And she's not seeing that this is connection.
Yeah, exactly. Like even in his showing up, um, in that maybe exhausted and worn out state, but the fact that he's there from his end, I could not be here and I'm here. And that's a strong show of commitment. And maybe even my nature would be to be alone right now, or to, but I'm still here. So it's about my presence. Just that I'm here when I could not be, um, is a strong sense of reflection of that commitment. Um, I think, like, yeah, it's not natural necessarily to us to notice that right away, but tuning into it could be very helpful. And I think if we think about it, it is meaningful to us because, women, we, like, even when you're not with your husband, like, the fact that I have a husband, there, like, I am married, that's a sign of, he exists. I think, a person who's trying to get married will maybe help us see that, right? Like, at least you're married, like, there is a person that you have committed to each other. It's not a simple thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. As I was driving home from Carpool today, I saw like an older couple, not like very, very old, but like, I don't know, maybe, I don't know, 70s, walking down the street and holding hands. And I'm for some reason checking out the way they're holding hands. And he was like holding her hand and she was holding his hand. And there was something so masculine about the way he was holding her, and like they were walking through the street and she was like leaning on that. And it's such a typical example where people just feel like, oh, it's so sweet, like they still love each other. But it was so clear to me that the Mashpia Makabel dynamic is what has created that commitment and connection and love that they're still right, that they're still holding hands. What is it? It's that he's that man in her life who she relies on, she trusts, and she was that woman in his life who he can give to and take care of and show up for. And they just like, it was so clear in that imagery of how much trust and commitment there was there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really cool. So, relationship coach of you to pull that out of a couple holding hands, like Mashpia Makabel right there.
It was so clear. I wish I could have videoed them. But I think I was just like thinking about, how does that happen? Like, how do you have 50 years of just like that beauty? That's what women look at. They're like, oh, that's so romantic. You know, where does that come from? And I think that this principle is really where it comes from, where to actively be in a state of trusting the connection means that I am in a state of that baseline commitment. I know that we are committed to each other. And then to feel that and to feel comfortable in that, I'm looking for the evidence in all the different ways that I see that he is committed to me.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing is you're saying, I start with, my baseline is, I trust that we are connected.
Yeah.
Now let me see where that's showing up.
Right.
As opposed to, are we connected? Which is a natural question that a lot of people are asking. I'm switching that to, we are connected. Here are some examples where I see it playing out. Right. So it's a decision. It's really a decision it's like a choice. This is an established fact about our relationship. Mm-hmm. Just notice how telling yourself that can make you feel. It's like it's bigger than you. That's what we see with the chuppah, right? Like Hashem has connected you. So it's lean on it.
Yeah.
Let it be the ground that you stand on, and then find evidence for it.
Meaning, like what you were saying before about the fact that maybe a woman's not even acknowledging to herself that it makes her feel different that she's a married woman. She's married. She has a husband. There's something like baseline about that changes the way she looks at herself and feels, that she might not even be aware to, because she's been married for a while, right? And like it's there. It's there. Meaning, I'll give you another example. Like my husband's presence when he's home, it feels different than when he's not home. When he lives in the city, when he's here in the city, it feels different than when he's traveling. That helps me get aware to the fact that I gain something and I feel something in just his presence, in his connection, in his commitment, right? So that's why I kind of also brought up that example of the older couple. It was so clear that she's leaning into that. Like, I have a husband. He's there, right? You could see it in the way that she was just like leaning on him. There's something so beautiful about acknowledging that commitment, acknowledging the connection.
Yeah, I had another like recent where this principle kind of popped into my head, in the simplicity of it. I was going to a wedding with my husband, and it was like an out of city wedding. So most people who were going were driving, as opposed to, I live in Crown Heights, so most times you can walk to the wedding halls. This was a drive. A Crown Heights family that people from Crown Heights were connected to, but driving to the wedding. And when it was time to go home, I was like noticing how like husbands and wives were finding each other to go home. Mm-hmm. And it's like, like in camp, you get assigned a buddy, like when you're going on a trip, like you have to make sure that so and so doesn't get lost for today, and like they're your buddy, and at the end of the day we're going to check like does this pair, like you make sure that that person made it to the bus at the end of the day. And it just struck me as like so special, like that connection of like this is your person, like you're buddies, like you're a team, like you're gonna go home at the end of the night together, right? You're gonna find each other at the end of this event, at the end of this wedding. And again, it's that like when the Rebbe, that famous clip of the Rebbe speaking to a woman about what is love, and she was somebody who was proficient in romance novels and was having a hard time getting married, possibly because of that, because of her vision being so shaped by everything she had read. And the Rebbe telling her that it's the commitment and it's the daily acts that reflect that commitment, that slowly take us from the me and you to the we, to the us, to the united one entity. And like making it maybe the fact that we have like we said in the beginning, narrowed connection down to one very specific type of interaction, we've closed ourselves off from all the places that it's showing up, especially since it's axiomatic to a marriage is connection. So then it should be everywhere. You should be able to see it all the time if you're noticing it.
So if I'm looking for it to prove itself to me, then I'm coming from the wrong place. So now let's just say I know we're committed, and now I'm going to look for how I see that commitment. There's lots of different areas to look for that, right? Like, because we have so much interaction. And I think it's an important thing to say, like it's in those small, tiny little things. Like I remember the first time a woman shared with me that her husband fills up her car with gas. I'm still not over it. And it's like been years. Like that, the commitment, like they have separate cars. He has his own car. She has her car. And he checks her car to make sure it has a full tank of gas. And if it doesn't, he goes and refills it for her.
So I want to stop you because I just stepped into the audience seat for a minute because I know this is, no, there's nothing wrong with what you said. I know that this happens to women. They hear examples, and instead of going to like, oh, I can find connection in my life, they think, I wish my husband would fill up my car with gas. Right. Or they hear my example of, well, my husband and I didn't go home from the wedding together. He left earlier than me and I had to find a ride with a friend. And again, it's coming from that sense of fear. It's coming from that panic. But maybe we don't have the connection because all these examples that other people are giving me, they're not showing up for me. So you go back, you slip right back into that panic mode of, you see all those examples that they said on the podcast that were supposed to be like little and basic, they would be huge. And I would be amazed if my husband did that for me, right? So yeah, I just wanted to like point out that it's not, it's your journey is finding your examples, and they always sound more romanticized when someone else is saying them. But like what we're saying is put yourself into that mindset where you do romanticize those basic acts. You do see them as displays of connection and commitment. And then you should be able to find examples.
No, 100%. I mean, like I could share just personally, like I'll see husbands. This is a great example, right? So like I'll see husbands show up to back to school night, or husbands who do carpool every day, or husbands who, I don't know, show up in the ways that maybe my husband's not showing up. And in the past, for sure, I use that as evidence to prove to myself that maybe we're not connected. And there's also many forms of connection and commitment. So if that specific form of connection and commitment is not showing up for you, that is painful. I just want to acknowledge that it's something that you want and it's not there. And this is all about creating creating connection, seeing what's already there, and creating more of it. So in a way, I wonder if we should just segue right into create with my thoughts, words, and intention, because
Yeah.
I really feel
Yeah.
like they work in tandem.
Yeah. This is a good place to jump into that. Because
Right?
as you were speaking, I was thinking of, a big piece here is what you focus on, you get more of.
Mm. Hmm.
So, what gets our attention grows.
Right.
Um,
100%. And I think an important thing to talk about when it comes to trusting the connection and I create with my thoughts, words, and intention is a fundamental piece that I think relationships gave to me and is the gift to the world is it gives the woman the ability to feel powerful in a feminine way. And being a powerful force in your dynamic, in your relationship with your husband is such an incredible thing because now you can create, you can be the one to bring something here instead of feeling like your life is happening to you and your husband's making you suffer because of all the different things that he's doing or not doing. Here it gives you the power. It basically hands the power right back into your hands and says, you can do something here. You can create something here. So trusting the connection is a powerful thing to do. It's not I'm just going to like make do with the little that I have and just like see that when he does this tiny little thing that I could see his commitment. No, it's not supposed to be, like toxic positivity. That's not at all what we're talking
right.
about here. What we're doing
Right.
is, so we're taking the abundance of what you do have and whatever that is, and to each person it's unique. And we're saying, let's look at this. Let's first of all look at the things we're not seeing. Let's uncover those. Let's stay open, which is, synonymous with femininity. Let's be powerful instead of just feeling like a victim to my fate and to my relationship. And let's create something here. Let's make space for something more.
Yeah.
And it's one of my favorite principles because it infuses so much life into me and into my relationship. It gives me
Yeah.
so much direction.
100%. I get to do something about it. I get to be proactive. I get to be creative. Which is a very feminine thing, like thinking physiologically about how a baby is developed. Our bodies are designed to take a fetus and grow it into a baby, a fully fledged human life, and we can do that. We can do that process of creation with our connection as well. We can take the beginnings of connection. We can take the seed of connection, that display of commitment, and we can expand it. We can expand it into a fully living, breathing entity of its own. And one of the first primary way of doing that is by trusting.
Yeah. So I create with my thoughts, words, and intention. Let's just dive into that just for a moment. Is yes, what you focus on increases. That's like, I feel like a pretty universal thing that people
Right.
talk about, right?
Right.
Not necessarily do they live by, but they know about the concept. Um, people know about it, but don't necessarily talk about the immense amount of effort and inner work it takes to really live with it.
Yeah.
Right? Like we're talking about your words, not just your words, your thoughts, much deeper. Like taking control over your thoughts, taking control over your beliefs about this person, about your husband, about yourself, and really staying true and focused with your intention, what you want here, what do you want to create, what do you want to choose. There's so much ownership in that. There's so much intention in that and consciousness that requires one to really live with that principle. I feel like it's like a lifelong endeavor, but we could say it, oh, what you focus on increases. It's not just a cool thing to think about when someone is really struggling with something and she feels like she's a victim to whatever her husband is bringing to her, whatever that struggle is, be it small or large, it doesn't matter. To each person, it's huge. To tell her that she's focusing on the negative and she's creating more of it, that's a very hard thing for her to swallow. It's big. And that she has agency here to shift whatever it is that she's struggling with could be enlightening and exciting, but also it's huge. It's a lot of power that we have in our hands.
Right. You don't want to make the mistake of feeling responsible. Like you're creating reality, as in you've become God in this situation. Right. That gets very overwhelming. I know people sometimes with the whole think good and it will be good concept, like there could be a lot of stress around that. Like, so I made the person sick, like we're not stepping into God's shoes at any point. We're talking specifically right now, and I think it's important that we keep it contextualized. We're talking specifically now about the dynamic in a relationship and how much your experience around the other person and your experience of the relationship will impact the relationship. And that focus on, like I had a client say to me, so, she was kind of like the penny was dropping at the end of the session. And she's like, so there's certain things that she's like, it's so bad for me to think those things. Like they're so undermining what I'm trying to build here with my husband. I really need to stop thinking them. Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah. Meaning that what we're saying is like, if you're going to keep feeding yourself a narrative that's directly undoing what you're hoping and wishing to build, there's going to be tension between what you want and what you're actively making for yourself.
Yeah. Which actually it's interesting to look at this from the context of being a makabel. In ways, I create with my thoughts, words, and intention really makes a very conscious makabel. She's choosing what she wants to receive. Obviously, we want to receive value and acknowledge all the wonderful things that our husbands are doing for us. But she also has the ability to choose how much efforts and how much concentration and how much weight she's going to allow certain things to be received by her. So it's an interesting thing to think about, right? Like we have a lot of power, and yes, I'm turning into this creative energy in our relationship, but I'm also the receptive one, right? I'm also receiving. So just like to put those two ideas together, she's choosing what she wants to fully receive. Does she want to fully receive his diagnosis and only see that, whatever that is? Do I fully want to receive his challenge? This is who he is. Or do I fully want to receive more than that? Do I want to, yes, it's there. We're not saying to not be realistic, but to also choose where I'm going to focus, choose where I'm going to look at this relationship.
It's a very powerful point that in that space of receptivity, because you're taking it in. So then what you take in and how you take it in and what you make it mean when you take it in, how you define your husband, his strengths and weaknesses, his actions, words, thoughts, all of that. Yeah, it's really going to be a make or break for this relationship. And I think a woman once shared with me after I'd given a talk about the principles. She said, she's like, I did figure a lot of this out. Like, she's like, it took me, she was an old woman, she's like, it took me like 25 years. We're specifically speaking about this idea of like what you make things mean and how you receive and your perspective on the whole thing. And she's like, it's nice. It's nice to have this awareness at the beginning stages of your relationship, but it's powerful to get it at any point. But I think what I liked about what she's saying is that eventually a person does realize that there's hopefully that that their perspective around the other and around their connection is what's facilitating more positive connection or not.
So I kind of want to just end off though with the idea that our listeners can kind of look into their relationships, look into their worlds and say, where can I see his commitment? Like in all areas of life, where can I see his commitment? How he shows up with the kids, how he shows up for me, how he shows up at work. Does he contribute financially? Like, does he show his commitment through ... And just
any form of support, his personality, who he is as a person. Is he funny? Is he serious? Is he thoughtful? His existence, the fact that he exists, his contribution to you, to his community, to the world around him, his very being. Yeah. And the fact that whoever he is, with all of that, he's your husband. So that automatically is a part of you. Anything that he stands in, he sort of stands in front of you and takes for you, any sort of pressure or stress or that he wants to absorb instead of giving to you. And how just having the mindset of trusting the connection, what it does to your interactions. If you come in to a particular interaction with that mindset, do you see a difference?
Yeah, I love that. And even for a woman to feel inside of herself, like how does it feel to be in a space of trusting the connection instead of constantly trying to assess whether or not we are connected? Like I know for myself, once I learned this concept, it was like a load off my shoulders. Like I don't have to constantly be looking for this. Like we just are. And I just lean on that was an amazing feeling. And something that I deeply dip into all the time, just to allow myself to feel that sense of calm.
Yeah, 100%. I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
Life-changing.
So, yeah. And like, maybe that's not going to be your reaction, and we're open to hearing, what your reaction is, but like allow yourself to just check in. What happens when I start thinking about
lean
his
into
commitment?
that and see how that feels.
Yeah.
100%.
And maybe just like a thing to put out here also is, all of this assessment on commitments, or on connection. Another good question is like, how am I showing up? Like, how do I show my commitments? If I'm always looking to see whether or not he's committed, it kind of sounds like I'm not so committed. So it's also a good thing for us to look at, like, do I show my commitment in certain ways to him?
Yeah, right. in how I even like some of the things could be, how I speak about him, how I speak about us, protection of our privacy, his dignity. Those are things that show commitment.
Yeah,
possibly something to think about.
Yeah, I think. Okay, Chayale.
It's been real. Yeah. We would love to hear your feedback, thoughts, and questions.
Please leave a comment below or email us at yourrelationship@gmail.com.
Looking forward to connecting with you.
See you next time.